Hi, thanks so much for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about MedPay coverage North Carolina. First and foremost, we're going to be talking about what is MedPay and what does it mean to you if you've been involved in an accident. I've taken a moment to write out just a really brief description of what MedPay is, and very simply there's a couple points in this that I want to emphasize to you to make sure that you understand as well as I do what MedPay is and what it isn't. So, MedPay reimburses a covered insured individual for reasonable and necessary medical and funeral expenses arising out of an accident. If you have medical or funeral expenses that don't arise out of an accident, probably not going to be covered by MedPay. If you have unreasonable or unnecessary medical expenses that arise from a car accident, probably not going to be covered by MedPay. This sentence has been written for a very specific purpose. If you can hold this in your mind, you're going to be better off when you understand how to process your MedPay claim. Next, coverage is not dependent on fault. There is no analysis in MedPay that requires to determining who is at fault and who's not at fault in seeking MedPay coverage. That means that if you were completely at fault for this accident or whether you were blameless in the eyes of the law, MedPay is still available to you so long as there's a policy that provides coverage and so long as you can prove those damages. Third, MedPay is incredibly helpful to accident victims. It can help pay for a lot of expenses. It usually comes very early on in the case. It can be incredibly important to making sure that you can carry on your life by seeking compensation for some of your reasonable and necessary medical expenses. It can advance costs for funeral expenses. It is helpful, but it is also incredibly complicated. There are numerous exceptions. There are numerous limitations, and there is numerous requirements to processing a MedPay claim. And final category under what is MedPay. MedPay typically comes from your own car insurance or insurance that provides coverage to you. So we're going to dive into what that means, but I put that on the board so that you understand that MedPay is a contractual right. It is covered by statutes, but it's not a statutory right. It's not coming from someone else's car insurance. It's coming because you are a contemplated or covered or named insured on a policy in a motor vehicle accident. Let's move on from that. That's going to become important again in a little while, but let's move on to the next topic. Who is covered by MedPay? Very simply, if you are a named insured and there's MedPay available in the policy, you're covered. If your spouse lives in the same household, there's coverage typically. Family member in the same household, a child, there's usually MedPay. Third parties that are in the vehicle that is in the accident, there will be coverage from that vehicle's policy so long as there's MedPay on that policy. So assuming you have a car insurance policy that contains MedPay coverage, you, your spouse, your family members, and anyone else riding in the car at the time of the accident could receive that MedPay coverage. So, how much coverage typically comes in a MedPay policy? That's a pretty simple question, but can be a little bit complicated. MedPay limits are dependent on your policy. What have you purchased from Geico or USAA or Allstate when you purchased your insurance policy? If you didn't buy MedPay coverage, you don't have it. It doesn't apply retroactively. So let's say you bought your policy 5 years ago and you've been keeping it up to date. You get involved in an accident. You're unfortunate enough to have to suffer that. The nature of your coverage is going to be dependent on that line item on your declaration page. In a hypothetical situation, coverage typically ranges from $250, sometimes a lot higher, up to $1 million, depending on the sophistication of the policy, depending on the size of the policy as well. And finally, for this section, MedPay is commonly between $500 and $10,000. You don't usually see policies much higher than $10,000, but it does happen. We've never seen one higher than $1 million. However, that doesn't mean that doesn't exist. So these are just typical ranges for average car insurance policies that contain MedPay, $500 to $10,000. If you don't have MedPay, consider reaching out to your insurance agent and asking, is MedPay something I should add to my policy? Because it can be incredibly helpful if you've not been in an accident and you're feeling that you may be a little unlucky or that there may be an accident you've been involved in, you didn't have coverage. Reach out to your agent, talk to them about the benefits of MedPay. It can be incredibly helpful, which we've discussed earlier under what is MedPay. Let's move right along. So when will MedPay not apply to you? That is a really important question. Here's the catch. There are numerous exceptions about when MedPay will not apply. For example, you're riding in a livery vehicle, like a taxi or an Uber, MedPay is probably not going to apply, even from your own car insurance policy. If you are driving on the job, your job is to drive a vehicle, your MedPay will probably not apply. If you're driving a recreational vehicle, MedPay is not going to apply. There are a variety of exceptions. It's important, as we discussed earlier under what is MedPay, that you understand that MedPay is complicated, and the fact that it's complicated means that you need to have mastery of what will apply and what won't apply while you're seeking compensation for your damages. That goes for bodily injury or property damage as well as MedPay. Don't not take the time to figure this out. It's too important to waste your time and energy on something that you may not be entitled to, or to not apply if you are entitled to it. Finally, this is a section we've left to the end. I'm a little nervous to bring this up to you because this is something that will be a topic of a future video, and will be its entire own video. Stacking MedPay. If you are involved in an accident and there are multiple MedPay policies that you are a spouse or you're a named insured or in the same household, for example, you've got an adult daughter that has a car insurance policy, you're involved in an accident, you've got MedPay, she has MedPay, you can absolutely stack that coverage. There's a right and a wrong way to do that. MedPay can be stacked. However, you cannot and should not use the same bill as reasonable and necessary medical or funeral expenses to submit to double dip. So there is a right way to double dip with stacking, that you can stack these policies, but you can't use the same bills twice. So pretty much, this is a pretty complicated area. I want you to feel comfortable with this introductory video to what is MedPay coverage, who can get it and who can't, and when it doesn't apply. But you're going to have questions, you're going to have concerns, and I want you to feel comfortable reaching out to us. We're here to help, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, whether that's by telephone, email, or if you want to reach out to us via DM at Twitter, that's at WPLNC. It's our pleasure to make these videos for you, and as always, reach out to us if you have a concern. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.